Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? This time, it's all about conquering job fairs. Not just surviving them, but really owning the experience.
Yeah.
I have to say, you sent a pretty huge stack of articles and notes this time around. Seems like you're getting ready for a big one.
You got it. We're going to dig way deeper than the typical, dress for success advice. We'll be getting into the psychology behind it all and how different industries have their own unspoken rules.
I like it. Strategic job fair domination. Okay, so what are some of those, unspoken challenges that people face at these things?
Well, let me tell you, just dealing with the sheer volume of information in the crowds can be pretty overwhelming. Your sources really hit hard on the importance of prepping beforehand, like scoping out the layout, researching the companies that'll be there, even planning your route through the whole thing.
So it's more like having a game plan rather than just winging it.
Exactly. And your sources all point to these three key areas: registration, how you navigate all those booths, and then, of course, that whole professional appearance thing. Think of it like a three-pronged attack.
Three-pronged attack. I like the sound of that. So break it down for me. What's the first prong?
Prong number one, getting yourself registered early online. This often means you get to bypass those crazy long registration lines, which saves you a ton of time.
That's a good point. Time is definitely precious at these things. Okay, so what about that second prong?
Prong number two is all about mapping out the booths beforehand. That way, you can prioritize the companies that really align with your goals. Your sources call these key employers.
So you're not wasting time at booths that aren't even a good fit. Smart.
Exactly. And then the third prong, professional attire, is about more than just looking good. It's showing that you understand the industry and that you respect their expectations.
It's all about those unspoken cues, right?
Absolutely. Like, a laid-back startup might be cool with jeans and a t-shirt, while a financial firm might expect the whole suit and tie shebang.
So tailoring your look to each company's vibe can really make a difference.
Big time. And speaking of making a difference, your sources also emphasize something that I think is really interesting: using more advanced English vocabulary to really leave a lasting impression.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into those fancy phrasal verbs and collocations, shall we? They can be a bit tricky, but they definitely make you sound more, sophisticated.
For sure. And mastering them can help you stand out from the crowd. First up, let's talk about check-in, meaning to officially register.
So instead of just saying, hey, I'm here for the job fair, I could say something like, I'd like to check in for the event.
Boom! That's it.
Yeah.
Way more professional. Or you could even say pre-registration lets you check in online to speed things up.
I like that. Streamlined and efficient, just like our overall strategy. Now, what about follow-up? That's always a biggie after any networking event.
Huge. It basically means to get back in touch after that initial meeting, maybe to ask for more info or show you're still interested.
So don't let those business cards just gather dust.
Nope. Take charge. You could say, did you follow up with that recruiter you talked to? They seemed really interested in your work.
Makes sense. It shows initiative. Do you have another example?
She decided to follow up with a personalized email highlighting the skills that match the job. Shows you're persistent and that you really get what they need.
Okay, that level of detail is key. Now, let's say I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the sheer number of presentations and workshops. Is there a more tactful way to say, I'm skipping this?
You're talking about opting out. It implies a conscious choice, like you're focusing on something more aligned with your goals.
So instead of saying, I'm not going to that talk, I could say, I'm opting out of that session so I can spend more time networking.
Perfect. Makes you sound strategic, not avoidant.
That's really helpful. Any other examples?
Sure. You could say some people opt out of those big presentations and go for the smaller, more focused workshops. Again, you're tailoring the experience to what you need.
I got it. So we've got check-in, follow-up, and opt-out. Now let's move on to those collocations, starting with, something pretty basic. Name badge.
Basic, yes, but the sources all stressed that your name badge is more than just a name tag. It's a tool for projecting professionalism and helping people connect with you.
So it's not just a matter of slapping it on and calling it a day.
Nope. It's a conversation starter. Make sure your name badge is easy to see at all times, that kind of thing.
Right, like a subtle signal that you're open to chatting.
Exactly. And hey, a name badge that's not where it's supposed to be can really slow things down, even block you from certain areas. So keep it secure.
Good point. Speaking of key things, earlier you mentioned key employers. How can we use that phrase effectively?
Well, figuring out who your key employers are before you even set foot in the job fair is crucial. That's how you stay strategic. Like, once you've researched our key employers, map out where their booths are so you can create the most efficient route.
So no more wandering around aimlessly. I like it.
That's the idea. This kind of focused approach can lead to better outcomes. Think about it. By concentrating on his key employers, he managed to snag several promising interviews.
Wow, that makes a huge difference. Okay, last but not least, let's tackle professional attire. What are the finer points here?
It goes way deeper than just throwing on a suit. You got to decode those subtle fashion rules of each industry. Like, researching the company culture of your key employers can help you figure out what to wear.
Right, because a tech company might have a way different dress code than, say, a law firm.
Totally. Sometimes a suit might be the way to go, but sometimes it's just too much. It's all about finding that sweet spot between looking sharp and fitting in.
So what happens if you totally miss the mark?
Your sources suggest that showing up in an outfit that clashes with the company culture can create a bad first impression, no matter how qualified you are.
Yikes, I could see that. So it's really about showing them you've done your research and understand their world.
Exactly. It's all about the subtle signals and how they build that bigger picture. Now, I know you're probably itching to start using all this, but first, we should probably go over some common mistakes people make with these phrases so you can avoid them.
Great idea. It's always good to learn from other people's slip-ups. Lay it on me. What are those common mistakes?
All right, let's dive into some of those common mistakes and how to avoid them. So, picture this. You're at the registration desk and you blurt out, "I'm here, job thing, we're go."
Oh, yeah, that's not exactly going to win any points for eloquence. What would be a better way to say that?
Try something like, "Good morning, I'm here for the job fair. Could you point me towards registration, please?"
Much better. Polite, clear, and straight to the point.
Exactly. Now, imagine you're faced with this massive line. Would it be cool to just say, "Oh, this line's way too long, I'm out of here"?
Definitely not. That just screams impatient and unprofessional.
Right. Instead, you could say, "The queue seems quite long. Is there a separate line for those who pre-registered online?"
Ooh, that's much smoother. And I like that you use queue instead of line. Sounds fancier.
It's those little tweaks that can really make a difference. Okay, now let's say you're at a booth, you're feeling overwhelmed, and you just want to grab some brochures and go. Would it be okay to say, "No talk, just info, thanks"?
I appreciate the directness, but that does sound a bit rude, yeah.
It does, right? How about this instead? "I'd love to grab some information about your company. Would it be possible to schedule a quick chat for later when it's less busy?"
Now that's perfect. You're showing interest, but also being mindful of everyone's time.
It's all about being strategic with your communication, even when you're feeling the pressure. All right, now that we've covered those common pitfalls, let's shift gears and talk about some bonus tips that can give you a real edge at the job fair.
Excellent. I'm all ears. What can we do to really step up our game?
Bonus tip number 1, plan your route. This builds on what we were talking about before. Don't just skim the map, really analyze it.
It's more than just knowing where the booths are located.
Right, you want to create an efficient path, factor in your key employers, any potential bottlenecks, and even make time for breaks and stuff.
So it's a pretty detailed plan, not just connecting the dots.
Precisely. Like one of the articles put it, by studying the event layout, figuring out which booths are must visits, and mapping a logical route, you can avoid wasting valuable time and make sure you connect with your top targets.
That level of prep definitely sets you up for success. What's the next tip?
This one's pretty crucial. Bring sufficient resumes. Might sound obvious, but underestimating how many you'll need can be a big mistake.
So don't just bring one copy, even if I already uploaded it online.
Nope. You never know. Multiple recruiters might ask for one and you want to be prepared. Plus, it just shows you're organized and taking this seriously.
Right, it's about going that extra mile.
Exactly. One of the articles really emphasized this, saying, having enough copies on hand ensures you're ready to seize any unexpected opportunities, demonstrating your commitment and readiness.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about being ready for anything. What's our final bonus tip?
Last but not least, track contacts. It's easy to get caught up in all the excitement and forget important details from those conversations.
I can see how that could happen. Everything's moving so fast. So how do we effectively track these contacts?
Find a system that works for you, whether it's making notes on business cards or using an app.
So something like, talk to Sarah from Company X, mentioned my project management experience, follow up by Friday.
Exactly. Those little reminders will be super helpful later when you're writing those personalized follow-up messages.
Right, it shows that you were paying attention and actually engaged in the conversation.
And that's what makes you memorable. As one source pointed out, having a system for jotting down important info and remembering to follow up ensures that you make the most of each conversation and build real connections that last even after the job fair is over.
Wow, these bonus tips are really valuable. They take everything to a whole new level. But even with all this preparation, things can still throw you a curveball, right? How can we handle those unexpected moments?
That's a really good point, and it leads us perfectly into our final challenge. It's designed to test how well you think on your feet and apply all these strategies.
The challenge, huh? Bring it on. I'm ready to see what I've learned. What is it? All right, lay it on me. What's this final challenge?
So imagine this. You've found your key employer, you've practiced your elevator pitch, but when you get to their booth, there's like a huge line. The clock is ticking, you have somewhere else to be soon. How do you handle this? And remember, you got to use one phrasal verb and one collocation we've talked about.
Okay, so it's all about thinking on my feet, using the right vocab, and staying strategic. All right, let me see. How about this? I see there's quite a queue to talk with the team, and I actually have to check out soon for another meeting. Would it be possible to, quickly exchange contact information and maybe set up a follow-up conversation when it's less crazy?
Boom. Nailed it. You slipped in both checkout and follow-up so smoothly, you politely mentioned your time constraint, and you offered a solution. That's exactly the kind of proactive communication that makes you stand out.
Whew, I'm glad that worked. I can really see how combining the right vocab with that proactive mindset can make a huge difference, especially when you're under pressure.
You got it. It shows them you're not just another face in the crowd, you're someone who's thoughtful, who values their time and respects everyone else's. So thinking back on this whole deep dive, what are some of the big takeaways for you?
Well, for me, it's got to be the emphasis on having a strategy and being prepared. It's not just about showing up, it's about going in with a plan and knowing how to communicate effectively.
Couldn't agree more. All those sources you sent, they really hammered home the point that having a solid strategy paired with the ability to express yourself confidently and professionally can totally up your chances of success.
Right. It's not just about those generic tips like dress nicely. It's about understanding how to tailor your appearance, your language, even your literal path through the job fair to each company and industry.
Exactly. It's moving away from that cookie-cutter approach and really personalizing your strategy. And this preparation, it doesn't stop when the job fair ends either.
You're talking about those all-important follow-up emails and thank you notes, right? Got to keep that momentum going.
Exactly. Those follow-up messages are so important for reminding them who you are and continuing the conversation. Remember, a job fair is just the first step in a much longer journey.
Wow, this has been a seriously insightful deep dive. I feel so much more prepared to tackle my next job fair, not just as a participant, but as a strategic player.
That's awesome. That was the goal. By getting into the psychology behind all of this, learning those power phrases, and practicing that proactive communication, you're setting yourself up for a much more successful and rewarding experience.
I really appreciate you walking me through all this information. I'm feeling confident and ready to take on that next job fair.
Best of luck. I know you're going to do great.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.